What's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and I think Nintendo, by this point, has legitimately lost their mind. The other day, I had mentioned that the Switch 2 and just how it's being handled reminds me a lot of the Xbox One launch debacle. And that's not to say that the Switch 2 will live in infamy in much the same way. Now, its long-term success, yeah, that might be impacted a little bit later on down the road. But what I am saying today is that Nintendo has a very real communication problem. There's just certain things that seems to go hand in hand. You have peanut butter and jelly. There's peas and carrots, LeBron and flopping, Walt Jr. and breakfast. And now, it kind of seems like the Switch 2 and just a lot of mixed messages. Well, now on top of all of that, it's almost like they resurrected Don Mattrick. I mean, there are some serious Xbox One vibes going on right now, and I'm a little baffled by this. You know that saying of the wise learns from other people's mistakes? Yeah, Nintendo didn't learn any of that. And we're going to get into all of that today, as well as apparently the best game of 2025, or at least so far. And even better here is that more than 40 million people will immediately have access to it day one at no extra cost. You just gotta love Xbox Game Pass, and actually, in this case, also PlayStation Plus as well. Subscribers of both need to stay tuned. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's just go and get right into things, though, starting off with Switch 2 Welcome Tour. Now, this is technically a new Nintendo IP, albeit without any of the Nintendo charm that we're used to seeing from them. And you know what? Okay, that's perfectly fine. It's basically a tech showpiece for what the Switch 2 is capable of. And I'm not really expecting a masterpiece from a game like that. And, you know, it has a ton of mini games packed in, including guess the frame rate, or here's how resolution changes, and yeah, I know. It all sounds like a game of all time. Here's where the real problem lies, though, and this has been a reoccurring issue with the Switch 2. The price. You would think that this would be a pack-in game. Nintendo was no stranger to pack-in games like Wii Sports, which turned into a legitimate franchise. But Nintendo, I guess they didn't like that idea for Switch 2 Welcome Tour. They looked at this game and they just thought to themselves that this is a must-pay-for game. We're going to charge $10. And that's something that they announced today. In their very own words, they said, it's not an exorbitant price, and it's a pretty robust piece of software. Okay. I mean, you have to be kidding me here. What is wrong with their marketing team? I don't care if this game is $5. It's still not worth it just on principle alone. If they want to charge $10, then okay, they can just say that and then shut up. Because anybody who knows anything about the game industry, anybody who's been following it, is not only going to look at past pack-in games from Nintendo, but they're also going to look at Astro's Playroom, which launched as a free game alongside the PlayStation 5, which, by the way, looks 10 times better than this. I mean, I love Nintendo. I grew up as a Nintendo kid. But come on, let's not kid ourselves here. It's crazy that I'm even saying this, but Sony is actually being less greedy than Nintendo. What is happening with Nintendo right now? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's still more Nintendo stuff that we're going to talk about today. So just gotta stay tuned. Now, I do actually have some good news for the Switch 2, though, because Hades 2, to some people's surprise, will launch as a Nintendo console exclusive. Now, this seemingly includes both the Switch 1 and the Switch 2, so really, as long as you have a Nintendo platform, or some kind of PC for that matter, to keep that part in mind, then you'll be able to jump into the Hades 2 version 1.0 update as soon as it launches later this year. Now, I do understand that this might be a little bit disappointing for anybody who's on Xbox or PlayStation, given just how popular Hades 1 was, but I will point out that this is actually how they handled the first game as well. It was staggered from Steam Early Access to the Switch 1.0 update, and then eventually over to Xbox and PlayStation. For that matter, Supergiant Games has always done staggered releases, whether that be with Bastion, Transistor, or now with Hades. I assume that that's because they're a smaller independent studio, so, you know, they can't exactly ramp up in the same way that you would expect from bigger studios. Speaking of independent games, a few months back at the Idea Xbox Showcase, they revealed a ton of Game Pass games like they typically do, which included Blueprints. Now, this is an odd mishmash of a roguelike puzzle experience. And at the time, I didn't really think much of this game, but apparently, it's actually now the best reviewed game of 2025. Yeah, that's right. Check this out. It has a 92 with 25 total reviews. So that's actually a pretty good sample size, and it's currently beating out games like Split Fiction, Monster Hunter Wilds, and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I mean, who would have thought that this small, previously unknown independent game would beat out all of those heavy hitters? But if you look at its reviews, critics are absolutely raving about how good this game is. And I don't typically do this, but I feel it's very telling in this situation. So let's just go ahead and check out some of the quotes from these different reviewers. Digital Spy said Blueprints is a special game full of mysteries, secrets, and mind-blowing moments with an addictive gameplay loop. It's so good that labeling this as one of the best puzzle games of all time feels like a disservice. Instead, it's possibly the most memorable experience I've ever had playing a game, and I can't stop thinking about it. Checkpoint Gaming then said, I cannot overstate how much Blueprints blew me away. With an addictive gameplay loop and expansive mystery that appears bottomless, it's the kind of game that makes you want to nuke your memory of playing it so that you can experience it all over again. Then PC Gamer said, I love Blueprints so much that I'm going to spend the next 1,500 words or so telling you as little about it as possible, unraveling its many mysteries and solving its multitude of puzzles, several of which I'm still working on even after finishing the game, is best done if you go in with nearly no information. Don't watch videos, don't Google solutions, don't even finish reading this review. Just go play it. And that right there is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm not going to watch any reviews for this game. It's been under the radar. It's been under my radar. And that's one of the beautiful things about gaming. Every once in a while, there's a game that just kind of comes out of nowhere, and it surprises everybody. So I'm hoping that will be this game, and that it's not just critic hype. I hope this translates to fan adoration as well, and we're going to soon find out in a pretty major way. The thing is that Blueprints is set to release here in just a few days on April 10th, and even better is that this is going to launch directly both in the Xbox Game Pass and into PlayStation Plus Extra. So we're talking about this game that's going under the radar, and it has these great reviews, and more than 40 million people are going to immediately have access to it. And that's one of the great things about these type of subscriptions. I think a lot of people would probably otherwise miss out on this game, but here it has a legitimate chance to break out. I also know that there's always, that discourse about if subscriptions are good or bad for the industry. And okay, I hear all that. But I think right now, out of all times, just kind of given the circumstances, there's somewhat of a saving grace for gamers. I mean, if you think about it this way, there's a lot of uncertainty going around in terms of pricing and whether or not things are going to go up. But here you have these subscriptions. And right now, they're only looking more attractive as that conversation continues onward, especially when you quite literally have the best rated game of 2025 launching directly into both of these services. So hopefully, and that's all I can really say here, I have hope that this will be good for gamers, and hopefully it'll be good for the studio as well. Again, though, Blueprints will launch on April 10th. And by the way, that also includes for PC, which might actually be where I play it, because I do feel like this is going to be a really good fit for the Steam Deck. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into some more Nintendo news, and there's a lot to cover here. So we'll first start off with another pre-order delay. Yeah, this comes from GameStop Canada, which I think is a little bit strange. I don't really understand why Nintendo themselves aren't speaking on this publicly, which is really a problem in itself. This just kind of ties in with all of their communication problems. The same thing applies to the Switch 2 Edition games and the key card situation. There was a lot of confusion with those as well. Nintendo, for whatever reason, just haven't really been straightforward with these different situations. But in this case, GameStop Canada posted this over on Twitter X. Regarding Nintendo Switch 2 pre-orders, pre-orders for the Nintendo Switch 2 in Canada will not start on April 9th of 2025 in order to align with the timing of pre-orders to be determined in the United States. Nintendo will provide updated information at a later date. The launch date of June 5th, 2025 remains unchanged. We apologize for the inconvenience. Now, Walmart has also echoed that sentiment as well, so this does seem to be a Nintendo mandate. And obviously, Canadians aren't exactly all that happy about this situation. And I agree with you all here. I don't understand Nintendo's reasoning for this. I mean, unless they're considering a price hike for Canada as well, which hopefully they're not, then I just don't see why they need to delay the pre-order process in the first place. I mean, I can't completely blame Nintendo for this specific situation. Again, it's their communication that I have a problem with. They're really not saying much of anything. And when they do speak, you just kind of wish that they didn't. More on that here in just a second because, wow. But so far, this news really only impacts pre-order dates. As of this moment, they haven't delayed its June 5th release, which they reiterated here, and hopefully that will remain the case. When they do announce its new pre-order date, though, I mean, yeah, there could possibly be price hikes. And I hate to say that, but, I also said this last week. I encourage people not to freak out until we actually get official news, just because this is a very fluid situation. What we do know for the time being is that the United States is in negotiations with nearly 70 countries about tariffs, including Vietnam. So we'll see how that situation plays out, and I think that could be Nintendo's plan as well. Otherwise, I think they would have already announced a new price. I think they do have hesitance on a higher price tag if they don't have to. So, for right now, everybody's just on edge to see what happens, and I completely understand that. And that also includes Nintendo in this case. If nothing changes, though, then yeah, we could possibly be looking at a $500 plus Switch 2, which, yeah, if there was already sticker shock, that could get even worse. What I do know, though, is that Nintendo's PR is out of control. Oh, Doug Bowser. He is quickly becoming the villain that his name implies, because he said a thing today that I couldn't help but laugh about. I was genuinely shocked that anybody in the game industry could make the same exact mistake that we saw Don Mattrick make back during the Xbox One reveal. I mean, that should be taught within the game industry. Don't do this. Yet, check this out. Doug Bowser was asked about the Switch 2 price, and here was his response. We recognize that there are some people that may not be able to afford the Switch 2's price point. That's why we wanted to make the other Switch platforms available. I mean, just wow. This is actually unbelievable. I mean, I had to look up when Doug Bowser joined Nintendo because it's unfathomable to think that anybody within the game industry could almost repeat the infamous Don Mattrick sales point to a T for a new console. And apparently Doug Bowser joined Nintendo back in 2015, so that is slightly after the Xbox One launch, but even still, he was a part of EA from 2007 through 2015, so he has zero excuse to spit out this tomfoolery. He should know very well why you should not say something like that. Nintendo was already having communication problems as is, but this just kind of magnified those issues that much more. I mean, I still think the Switch 2 is going to sell incredibly well when it first releases, but Nintendo is doing everything that they possibly can to stifle it as much as they possibly can. I don't know by this point. I would have never expected this from Nintendo out of all companies. They've been around for a long time. They should know what to say and what not to say, but yet here we are. And the Switch 2 messaging, is now being compared to the Xbox One. And that's not exactly a great sign. Let me know what you all think about all this, though. Do you think this is a big deal, or do you think people are just simply over-exaggerating the situation? Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.